What's up, everybody? Nadi here. I am with Coach Kyle. Coach Kyle is a coach for Blacklisted program. Kyle, would you just elaborate a little bit more on what you do, who you are, all that?
Yeah. So I coach and own Blacklisted. We started back in 2018. I've been in the coaching space for, since like 2012.
Wow.
I started messing around with it in 2011. So,
Whoa.
yeah.
Okay.
So, yeah,
OG.
Yeah. So I've been in the coaching space for a while now. I just kind of coach and watch athletes get better. So
you started in like 2011.
Yep.
What got you to that like point of like, I could coach this? Like, what was it?
Okay, so I got into CrossFit. I was introduced to it in 2009. Didn't really start doing CrossFit until like 2010.
Okay.
And then spent a lot of time CrossFitting since 2011. And I walked into a gym in Minnesota when I was home on leave, and it ended up being basically the guy that coached one of my, he basically introduced me to CrossFit.
Okay.
In Okinawa, Japan.
Whoa.
So it's like randomly just walked into this gym and that's who it was.
Reconnected.
I was like, what the hell? So I was just kind of like, whenever you get addicted to something, you like dive headfirst in, right?
Yeah.
And so I was just asking him as many questions as I could while I was on leave. Just hanging out at the gym, trying to learn as much as I could from him. Mm-hmm. And one of the things he said was, to start coaching, you basically just go get your level 1, and then a gym will kind of just hire you on. Mm-hmm. So I was like, I didn't know if I wanted to make a career of it at that point in time. I kind of did. And so I just went and got my level 1 with one of my buddies that summer. So like 6 months later, I think.
Wow, fast.
Yeah, oh yeah. And then, let's see. Yeah, and then in 2012, I got out of the Marine Corps. Actually started coaching in a different gym.
Okay.
And then it was kind of like group classes. I left that gym. When I left, I had also hired a coach at the time. When I left, a bunch of people asked me about individual coaching. And so that's when I started 2013 was when I started individual coaching.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. What was, so you moved 6 months. You were like, this is it. I want to figure out if coaching's for me.
I didn't really know if it was exactly what I wanted to do at the time, but it was like an avenue to get a little bit of income coming out of the Marine Corps, if that makes sense.
Okay.
So it was just kind of like a next step thing. And I ended up going to school. I got out in spring of 2012, started school in fall of 2012. And so I coached, and with the GI Bill, you get BAH, so you get paid to go to school, kind of.
Yeah.
So I was coaching and then making money while going to school as well. Mm-hmm. So, and then I think when I knew I wanted to make a career of it, it was probably about 2015 or 16.
Okay.
And that's actually when you started to see in the space people actually making careers of it, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And so that was kind of like, that was when I kind of knew, if that makes sense.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you figured out, that was when you knew in 2016. What shifted? Was it just like following the trend of coaching group to individual?
No, okay, so with the deep dive into everything, like, especially with CrossFit, like you get hooked, right?
Yeah.
And so I was also trying to be competitive. And at the time I was like, I want to be like if you're going to compete, you got to be doing something different than your competitors, right?
Yeah.
And so I was trying to find what was different, which led me down a rabbit hole of going to OPT, who was very science-based at the time. Like, I don't even want to say science-based, but they were very like training principle based. And so everything else was just like all other programs were just CrossFit. So it's just, you're practicing the sport all the time.
Yeah.
And I was like, this doesn't seem like it's the best route to go if you're going to get better at a sport. Like when I played sports growing up, you would go to practice and you would do, you know, all these little drills to help you get better at sports. So I was like, that's missing. And that's something that's not in the sport yet. So it led me to OPT. And then to get an individual coach from there.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
What, just going off the cuff, what do you like about group training and what do you like about individualized training?
So,
because they're both very important.
Yes, agreed. So over the years, like obviously philosophies change, and like when I got a coach, I was like, you have to follow the program to the T, like can't be going off script, yada, yada, yada. But I would always, because I was a team athlete, I would always have training with the team on the Saturday, which was straight chaos.
Yeah.
And we were really good. Like, you know, Andrea Nisler, she was with us. Kelly Wild, she was with us. And the guys on the team were also like, we were really good. Obviously, Andrea and Kelly are freak athletes, and they went on to do crazy stuff in the sport.
Yeah.
And I was a team athlete my whole career, or my whole life, even in the military. So it's kind of like one of those things, like deep down, I still understood the importance of a group training session. And so I was very like, you have to do all your training individually, but then I was still like doing this one group training session on the side.
Yeah.
And so when I got hired at TTT, it was a lot of just very isolated, like do your training by yourself. I tried to bring a little bit more of that culture of group work there.
Yeah.
And then we had a really successful season in 2017. We ended up finishing 6th place at regionals, so one spot out we had no business being in that position. We had a girl that had just started CrossFit 6 months ago on the team. So
that's crazy.
We had a masters athlete on the team who's a freak athlete. Like she was a really good athlete, but like we had no business being in that position. But I think a lot of it was testament to kind of like the group and the team culture that we built.
Yeah.
So I just knew, I knew kind of at that point maybe that you could never, if you're building a good culture and good camaraderie, that will drive a lot of people's training success, if that makes sense. And so kind of since then, I've been trying to figure out a way to incorporate, or what's the best mesh of doing an individual program and a group program at the same time. Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, growing up playing team athlete sports.
Yeah.
There's such a huge importance on character development and almost a higher sense of like purpose.
Yep.
When you had people with the same common goal.
Yeah.
Surrounding you.
Yep.
Training with them.
Yep.
But like as a goalkeeper, you had your individualized purpose as well.
Right.
That your team necessarily weren't going to be able to understand, or but you still were like very much so a part of the team.
Right. Yeah.
So you need that And sometimes it's good to have that individualized
Totally.
aspect of it, but
Yeah. Well, it's like everything has, like, when you're in a team sport, baseball is a good example of this. You have your job to do. But if you don't do your job, your team gets let down. I think that's a super important lesson for people to learn, is like, hey, your job is very important to the success of what we're building. I think people get too caught up in the micro of, like, if it's like, you know, if you're working at a big corporation, it's like, I hate building out these Excel sheets, or I hate communicating with clients, whatever it might be. But it's like, ultimately your job matters to the bigger picture of things, because your higher up, manager, whatever it is, doesn't have the time to do that task anymore.
Yeah, it relies on you.
And they rely on you to get that job done. Yeah. And so, you know, I think that's a super important lesson that team sports teaches people, if that makes sense.
Oh yeah, 100%. I loved being on a team. That's why I went and did soccer in college and not swimming.
Yeah.
Even though swimming is still very team oriented, it's way more individualized.
Yes. Yeah. Your head's in the water for hours.
Stop, I love it. It's like the whole world just disappears.
Yeah.
It's fantastic. All in its time. Like,
right.
You know, sometimes you can get a little too lost.
Yeah, for sure.
So going off of that, you have a lot of experience coaching.
Yeah. Yep.
So what do you think are some, like, you know, other than like maybe what we've talked about, some really key lessons that you think athletes need to learn?
Okay, yeah. So I think these two kind of coincide with each other. I'll try and whittle these down a little bit, but I think the big overarching picture is like a healthy ego is a big lesson to learn.
Okay.
And with that, learning how to let things go. So I think that a lot of people's success is actually deterred by them hyper-focusing or fixating on accomplishing their goal.
Okay.
And it leads to poor performances because they're scared to lose that goal. They've built it up in their mind to be like this ultimate, like, hey, if I get here, that's the pinnacle, and I've accomplished it.
Yeah.
And I think that whatever it is that they build up in their mind around that causes them to almost play scared and try to play to not lose that goal. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And so I think they kind of couple each other, because with an ego, you're like, I deserve this, if that makes sense. And so learning how to have a healthy ego and like have confidence in what you're doing, and understand that it's the journey to get you to the goal. It's not the goal that really matters. It's kind of like a good lesson to learn. And along the way, you'll start to develop a healthier relationship with your ego.
Yeah.
Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah, there's this really good quote by, I believe it's some Chinese philosopher. I'm sorry, I can't quote his name. But he said, the man that enjoys the journey will go a lot farther than the man who enjoys the destination.
Yes. Yep.
So kind of going off of that, of the journey is really like, have the destination, sure.
Right.
But really, like, it's the journey and how you get there that matters.
The journey doesn't start without a destination.
Yeah.
But the fun is the journey. You like, nobody reads a book to be like, Frodo leaves the Shire. Frodo destroys the ring.
Yeah.
Like,
that's so true.
You read the book for the story.
The context, the substance is that whole, the journey.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yep.
The character building. We get to see, like, the evolving, like, growth. And that's why we read biographies.
Yep.
And why we follow people. We
Yeah.
want to see their involvement, their character development.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly. What do you think? So in that, what do you think could be some like downfalls to like athletes and pursuing like healthy ego?
Not self-reflecting
Okay.
is I think the biggest one.
Okay.
Is not reflecting on your actions, not reflecting on your thoughts, not reflecting on your performances, and actually analyzing kind of like who you are as a person, and then checking in to make sure that your why aligns with the destination that you're trying to get to.
Okay. Almost like a reality check.
Yep.
Versus daydreaming.
Yeah. Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
That's a great way to put it. Yeah.
Okay, all right. And then I guess going back to like another thing is like forget. So when I was a goalkeeper, if I didn't make a save or if I had a bad play,
Yeah.
if I dwelt on that, I mean, I'm gonna keep making bad plays.
Right. Exactly.
So we used to have like this phrase, and I think it's from a book as well. So the goldfish.
Okay.
Be a
Yes.
goldfish.
Yep. Yep.
Forget
Yeah.
so easily.
Yeah.
In one ear out the other. Like it's
Yep.
over, it's done. There's nothing you can do to change it.
Yep.
But like learn from it.
Yep.
Which I think is that reality that you're talking about.
Yes. Yeah. And I think, and you know, that's I think a lesson that a lot of people learn in sport. And like, I kind of learned it more in the Marine Corps than I did in sport, because like, you fuck up in the Marine Corps, you get yelled at, you get your punishment, whatever it is that it might be, and then you quickly you're like, fuck, I don't ever want that to happen again. And then you quickly learn that happens again and again and again and again, and you just keep fucking up. Like it doesn't matter. But your ultimate job is to try and be as good at your profession as you can possibly be in the community that I was in.
Yeah.
So you obsess over that, and the mistakes don't matter anymore, because at some point in time they do start to stop, and like you stop messing up as much.
Is it because you think you're obsessing over being the best rather than obsessing over how you weren't the best?
Exactly. You're like, okay, this is a learning opportunity. Don't do this again. Does that make sense?
Yes. So approach it from a non-emotional point.
Yeah.
And analyze like, how do I not need to do this again?
How do I create a system so that I don't do that again?
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And to go back to your point, like, what do people mess up? Is I think this generation in the sport, probably for about the last 6 or 7 years, is so focused on what their appearance is like on social media that they don't obsess over their profession and their craft. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And
We're very distracted.
Yes. Yep. And so that's been a learning experience for me, and how to try and coach that and teach those lessons to people is like, your obsession of your craft is ultimately why you need to start this sport, or it needs to morph into it. Maybe you started it because you do want, fame, glory, success in the sport, money, whatever. All those things are fine. Like, you should want to chase those things.
Yeah.
But the chase is the obsession of being better.
Yeah. Well, and then also like to that point, there's another like view on it. Yeah, chase that fame, success, whatever. But like, how do you keep it? It's so easy to get wealthy, rich, fast, right? In all aspects of life.
Right.
But then how are you going to sustain?
Right.
And really, if you're doing it just for the money, fame.
You've hit the destination.
You've hit the destination, exactly. You're not going to be able to keep going.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so that's kind of where having fun with the journey comes in.
Yeah. All right, a couple of like fun questions.
Yeah.
what is your favorite movement to train and coach? And then what is your favorite movement in competition?
Okay, so I get these questions a lot.
Oh no,
Well, I've gotten them before. CrossFit, for me, hurt. Everything hurt.
okay.
So people talk about like fun workouts all the time. I had no fun workouts.
Oh,
All I was trying to do was kill myself. So the movements that I was good at, really good at, were thrusters and shockingly burpees. I actually finished, in 2014, I finished 94th in the world on a thruster and burpee workout.
and how tall are you?
6'2".
So people know that
When
that's
this-
actually like a magic trick.
I was 6'2", 225 at the time.
That's
Now,
insane.
2 years later, I wasn't even close to that number. A bunch of people entered the sport, so it's kind of a product of the time.
Yeah.
But I was really good at those two movements in the sport.
Wow.
Now, I just like doing machines because they don't hurt.
Yeah.
Like I both physically and physiologically hurt in the sport because my movement quality was trash. So
Okay.
now I just like doing machines because they don't hurt.
Yeah. So movement quality is trash. This is off the cusp. Sorry. Coaching.
Yeah.
How has it evolved and gotten better, and how has it digressed?
So I think people's understanding of systems and how worn out people can get has evolved a lot.
Okay.
Even myself, like I remember being super dumb and super young in the sport and telling somebody that you don't need to taper because Rich Froning doesn't taper. Idiot. And so like, but that was the mindset at the time. Sport was super new. Nobody really knew genuine training principles. So I think the sport has evolved from a coaching standpoint in that regard. Devolved.
I think we might have hit on it a little bit. I could think of a way it's devolved.
What have you noticed?
Distracting. There's so many
Yeah.
distractions. There's so many
Yeah.
chasing of, I want to be like Tia Toomey, or I want to
Yeah.
be just like a daughter.
Yeah.
And like, so I'm going to buy what they buy. I'm going to
Yeah. Yep.
supplement what they supplement.
Okay, yeah, yeah. So yes, the sport has become. It always was, but it was more so. It was because you were trying to figure out what the best was doing. But it's become way more of a popularity contest and a like a just follow the crowd type
Yeah.
thing. There's not a lot of independent thinking anymore.
Yeah.
And that was one thing that I loved about the sport when I first started was there's a lot of independent thinking that went on. If that makes
Yeah.
sense.
Almost like, well, you were building it.
Yes.
So
yeah.
of course it was in its like birthing phase.
It was in its super growth phase.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Crazy. Any words of wisdom, lasting remarks to all athletes, all like fully abled, adaptive athletes, trying to get into the sport? Maybe they're thinking of starting to compete and like it's the open now, and so
I think so. The beauty of CrossFit is the fact that you can walk into a CrossFit gym, go to a group training session or a class, have a ton of fun,
yeah.
learn the sport, still practice the sport, and then within a year or two, you're figuring out what you need to do to compete in the sport. So I would say the first thing to do isn't rush into competition. It's to learn to enjoy the sport.
There's that
And I
journey.
think- yep. And I think you can do that through group classes really, really well.
And then also just kind of going off of what you said earlier is like poor form, coaching has gotten better at like form. So those first 2 years could be very strategically pivotal
Yes.
if you do decide to compete.
Yep.
And so, but like yeah, build those connections
Yeah.
and friends and
Yeah.
everything like that.
Yeah.
So
Find a community. I
yeah.
think that's the big one.
So build that, find that community. We're pretty awesome, I think.
Here we are. Yeah.
Yeah, there's that ego.
Yeah.
Maybe that one needs to go down a little bit. Well, Kyle, thank you so much for rowing with me.
Yeah. Thanks for having me on.
Strokes of genius.
Yeah. It's a nice
Love
little warm up for the day.
Oh gosh, yeah. Long day ahead of
Yeah.
us.
Thanks, Nadia.